Welcome to Project Arkangelos. This is episode number 10. And tonight, I want to talk a little bit about my background. And I know there's this expression, I didn't ask for your life story, but I'm going to give you a little portion of my life story because I feel like that is what I can offer you in terms of wisdom. But I don't mean that with a sense of pretense. I mean the authenticity of my real lived experience and the mistakes that I've made. So rather than me telling you what to do or offering advice or anything like that, what I can just tell you are my actual lived experiences and the pitfalls of them, and then you can do with that information what you will. And of course, I can't give you my whole life story. I'm 34. I can't do it in one episode. There's different chapters, and I'm not going to go to childhood. I'm not talking about childhood. I want to give you an overview from my teen years through my 20s, leading up to where I am now. So basically, I discovered music. Well, I mean, music was always there. I was raised with music. I was put through programs. There was a program at Wollongong Conservatorium of Music, and it's still there to this day, that I went to when I was 6 years old. Anyway, I said I wouldn't talk about childhood, but it's related to the music aspect of my life. And this program, CHIME, or Childhood Music Education Program, I loved it. I still remember it to this day. I was 6 years old, and you would spend 2 weeks on a different instrument. So every 2 weeks, so you'd spend 2 weeks learning an instrument and then switch to another instrument. For 2 weeks, then switch to another instrument. I remember doing keyboard, trumpet, violin. I remember learning about major and minor tonality. So that made a great impression on me from a young age. And then at the end of that program, someone interviews you and basically recommends an instrument for you to learn. And I don't know if my memory is playing tricks on me, but I swear the interviewer said, because I have like these kind of dimples in my knuckles, and like when I close my teeth, the front teeth kind of sit over the bottom teeth, just a little bit, that therefore I'd be suited for clarinet. So I remember doing a bit of recorder at school, like the recorder. I don't know if everyone was made to do that, but I remember doing that in school. So clarinet was like a step up, like it's kind of like a leap up from recorder. So I learned clarinet maybe from when I was 8 years old until I was about 10. I did 2 years of clarinet and it was difficult. I think it was 2 years. I don't even know if it was 2 years, but I remember learning clarinet. Had to buy a second-hand clarinet and everything. I've still got the clarinet till this day. I've stowed it away. I've got the case and the clarinet. But that just didn't last. Very complex instrument, especially once you get to the higher notes. I want to say the higher register, but the higher notes, because it's not like a piano where you just press keys. You have to like hold certain notes down with the clarinet in order to access other notes. It's a very different thing. So I have tremendous respect for clarinet players, and I do remember one particular moment in primary school where the friends I was hanging out with, they were talking about starting a band, which is funny once you learn about the rest of my life story, how things actually played out. But they were talking about starting a band. And I said, "Oh, can I join? I play clarinet." And I can't remember exactly what they said in response, but the vibe, the idea was, that is just not a cool instrument. That's just not a cool instrument for bands, bro. They didn't say that, but it had the same effect. So, anyway, well, fast forward, and I actually ended up playing in bands and touring quite a lot, playing on massive stages in front of loads of people with incredible sound systems, supporting international artists. So it's funny how life plays out. But I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't even thinking about it at the time. Like I said, I was learning my clarinet, my recorder. So after clarinet, I took up piano lessons. And I was a bit more fond of piano, but it never really grabbed me. It never really set my soul on fire. I got lessons for about 2 years again. I did grades. Well, maybe I got lessons for a bit longer, but I think I completed grade 2. So I got up to grade 2 in AMEB grading system. But it just never really clicked with me. I just liked to buy the top 50 pop song charts, piano sheet music. I just used to buy those because I just wanted to play the songs that I already liked. I loved music, particularly at that age, pop music. I just was obsessed with music and pop music. I didn't really know much about music, I just liked pop. This is in the 90s. So anything, but like mostly like boy bands were a big thing then, particularly Five. I wasn't big on Backstreet Boys, but I still sing their songs to this day. Not the biggest Hanson fan. For me, it was Five, with a five, the number five, IVE, Five. They were a UK boy band. I also liked Lou Bega, Mumbo Number Five, Eiffel 65, Aqua, the band who did Barbie Girl. I had their cassette tape. So I loved music. And so that's what I got out of piano, was I was able to learn those pop songs. I think I did piano through till early high school. I remember doing a music performance, like a music assessment in front of the class. It was a song called The Snake Charmer, for any of you piano students out there, if that's still a song on the curriculum. I liked that song, the kind of Egyptian arabesque modes and scales. I did like that, but again, it just never really clicked with me where I just wanted to practice all day, every day. It was sort of a chore for me to practice. So then I started learning guitar. I thought maybe guitar. So I started taking guitar lessons while learning piano, and that was for classical guitar. But that lasted about 6 months. It just felt like too much work to read the notes on the page and where they match up on the fretboard. I think that's like a meme with guitarists. They don't know how to read because well, they know how to read, but just not on the guitar because it's really difficult. And I have full sympathy for and empathy. So that lasted about 6 months. But it was the drum kit that really clicked with me. I wasn't expecting it. My whole life, I never thought about drums. I never even really noticed the drums in the music I listened to. And so in year 7, basically the end of year 6, year 7, so like when I was age 12, age 13, my friend introduced me to a band called System of a Down. And this is just when they'd released the album called Steal This Album. It's the one that came right after Toxicity. And I became obsessed. I'd never heard music like that. I'd only heard pop music. And I heard this album. And then I checked out the rest of their discography, System of a Down's discography, and I became obsessed with heavy music. I didn't even know it was heavy music. Whatever that thing was, I was obsessed. And so basically, I had one friend in school who showed me that, and he also showed me a lot of other heavy bands. He was big into AC/DC. For some reason, I never really clicked with AC/DC. I know they're the Aussie export, and I'm Australian, so it's almost like blasphemy, but it just, for whatever reason, we just never clicked. There's a few songs that I really like. However, so my friend was way bigger into AC/DC, way more into AC/DC. But he was also into bands like Slayer. So basically, we started getting into all kinds of heavy music. All kinds. It's hard to really list because it just went from one to the other, one to the other, one to the other. Actually, this period, it was a lot of new metal. So Fear Factory, that was a big one for me in year 7. Someone actually gave me a burnt CD of the album Digimortal by Fear Factory. I think it came out in 2001. And a girl randomly gave me a burnt copy of Digimortal. I'd never heard of this band. I took it home and listened to it. I'm laughing because if you've heard that album, it's like, it's the double kick, the double kickers with the feet at insane speeds. Again, I'd never heard anything like that, and my brain just went, what the frrrr? I was corrupted from a very young age. So the reason I'm explaining this is because over time, my one friend who was into heavy music, we kind of like had each other in terms of the only people we knew in school that were listening to this kind of music. One day he suggested that we should start a band where he plays guitar and I play drums. And I had never played drums, as I mentioned. I'd never thought about drums. I didn't even notice the drum parts in the music I listened to. But I just shrugged and said, okay. And then I asked my mum if I could get a drum kit. I asked my brother, and he was somewhat more disapproving of the idea. But I was on a mission, so I just didn't even take a note of that. But he did say, if you get a drum kit, you've got to get a double kick pedal. And again, I just shrugged and said, okay. So anyway, fast forward, I get a drum kit. And this is around the time I'm listening to metalcore. So I'm listening to bands like Killswitch Engage, Parkway Drive, Lamb of God, Unearth, etc., etc. Devil Driver. They were once Cold Chamber. Well, one of the guys, the lead singer from Cold Chamber started Devil Driver. Got all these songs from the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack. If you remember that movie, Freddy vs. Jason, had an incredible soundtrack. Also bands like In Flames, who I heard through MTV Headbangers Ball Volume 2, that compilation CD. Oh wow, what an incredible compilation CD. Far out, I played that CD to death. Bands like Mudvayne. So I basically took this kit home, set it up. I didn't really have lessons. Actually, I did have lessons, but the lessons, we didn't do lessons the way that drums are taught today. I remember my first lesson, my teacher showed me what a practice pad was. He showed me how the stick rebounds, and he just said, see this space when you're holding the stick, this is called the fulcrum. And you want to keep the fulcrum open at all times. That was the lesson. And he just said, now you've got to go get a practice pad. And it's funny because I asked my mum to get a practice pad, which I should have gone with her. You're a kid and you just say stuff. You don't even really have a strong sense of self at that point. And she came home with what I nicknamed the jelly pad, because it was a practice pad. If you've seen practice pads that drummers practice on, they're like rubber, but they're kind of like a toughish kind of rubber, so there's a rebound. But the one my mum got, I called it the jelly pad. Apparently it's meant for a bass drum. I don't know, maybe like a mute for a bass drum, so it's designed to like absorb the impact. But it did feel like jelly, so there was no rebound at all. So that was my practice pad. And so I did have some lessons, but it wasn't like, here's the rock beat, here's a drum fill, these are eighth notes, these are quarter notes, these are triplets. He just kind of showed me how to hold the sticks. That's mostly what I remember from those lessons. And after about a year, he left a message on our answering machine and just said, all right, at this stage, Jamal is progressing at such a rate that there's nothing else I can really show him anymore. So you're on your own, buddy. He didn't really say that, but he didn't say that last bit. But he said all of that first bit. And I would have been 13, 14. So for me, hearing that, I felt like, well, I didn't feel like I was ready to move on to another teacher. But if he said so. But for me, so my point was I didn't have traditional drum lessons, you could say. My whole journey of drumming has been from like this teacher to this teacher to this teacher to this teacher to this one to this one to this one to this one to this one. And over time, basically, I had to just develop my own approach, not even consciously, but out of necessity, because I'm getting all these different perspectives. And then I'd be on the stage, like I had my own life to live, and I couldn't just have 1,000 voices going in my head. I had to just decide, pick a little from here, take a little from here, absorb it all, but condense it, forge it. There's another word. Unite, it's not quite it. Meld, fortify it into the way I play. Let me just check my battery. Oh yeah, we're good. There's a word for it. Anyway, if it comes to me, I'll say it. But so I had to find my own way with the instrument. But I still got a lot of great wisdom and advice from a lot of different teachers. But I just never had the one teacher for a number of years. I just had this haphazard educational experience with drumming, for better or worse. So, okay, so we get this drum kit, we go home. Well, so the drum kit's set up and I'm playing on it, I'm practicing. And my approach, what I did, wasn't even an approach. What I did was I would look up the drum tabs for the songs I was listening to. So at this stage, it was Killswitch Engage. They had just released their End of Heartache album, and that came after the Alive or Just Breathing album. So you can look up the dates of those albums. I think we're talking about 2003, 2004. That's when I was 13, 14. I'm born in 1990. So I would just learn those songs, and I had a double kick pedal from day one. So I would just be like bucket dicka bucket dicka bucket dicka bucket dicka bucket 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 ducka duka 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 da from day one. And it just seemed that I was picking things up faster than the average person. But of course, when that happens to you, you don't know that it's happening to you because you don't know what the average person's experience is. You just know your experience. But I remember having my first jam with my friend, and we'd agreed to learn a few Killswitch Engage songs, and I think maybe Iron Man by Black Sabbath. which at the time the drum tab was like 14 pages because the fills are so varied. It's quite a long piece of music with fills that vary with not many repeats. So I think that one kind of fell through. But we learnt a few Kill Switch Engage songs and we met up to practice. And I remember I wrote 8.5 weeks on a piece of paper and I put it on the front of my bass drum because I felt very self-conscious and I just wanted to point out I've only been playing this instrument for 8.5 weeks. But it turned out I was like nervous about that fact, but it turned out that apparently was impressive that I was playing Kill Switch Engage songs after only playing the instrument for, what is that, 2.5 months. But to me, I didn't notice because I'm just like, well, that's how the song goes and now I'm just playing it. Is that good? I don't know. I'm just doing it straight away. I just get it, I guess. Not like, I didn't know I got it, but it just seemed that way by people's reactions. And so fast forward maybe like a year, maybe when I'm like 14, 15, so 2004, 2005. My friends and I, we'd been like forming a band. We were trying to form this band called Circle of Defeat. It was like a failed project. We tried recording it ourselves. It just wasn't good at all. But we were looking for a singer, and I don't know where. There's a lot to this story, but my friend met someone on some kind of online forum. I don't know what or where or how, but he found a guy in the local area and he came to my mum's house and he became the singer of Circle of Defeat. We jammed and he became the singer. And then maybe like a week or two after that, so that singer knew some other people from his school who were going to record a song and they needed a drummer within like a week or two. So I just shrugged and said, yeah, okay. So then that weekend they came to my house to rehearse and I learnt the songs. And then the next weekend I went to the studio. I think it was like 311 Studios in Wollongong. It maybe had a different name, something like that. So I had my first proper studio experience when I was 15 years old, which I didn't think was weird at the time. It isn't until much later in the story when I went to music university and I met people who hadn't even really played gigs, let alone toured, let alone ever been in a studio. Whereas for me, I'd been doing that for years. So it was interesting for me to see other people's experiences because I just thought everybody had my experience, as you do when you're young and immature. You don't realize how radically different everyone's experience is. And you don't realize how fortunate you are as well. So it makes you really grateful for your experiences. So, studio from a very young age. And then from that studio recording with that band, that exact recording we submitted to Wollongong Youth Centre because they had a support slot open for Parkway Drive. Again, this would have been 2005. Parkway Drive did this all ages assault tour where they basically played every small town between each major city. And long story short, my band won the support slot. So my first ever gig, like proper gig at a venue, ticketed event, was opening for Parkway Drive at Wollongong Youth Centre in 2005. So I've had a very peculiar journey with music and life, and just bringing it back to where my friends in primary school saying that clarinet isn't cool. They wouldn't let me in their band. And then I end up opening for Parkway Drive on a whim. I'm just following this whim at this stage, and it's all just happening really, really quickly. It's all just unfolding very fast. So now that band, after that gig, it maybe lasted another year or two. But some of us basically, as it happens, guitarist from this band, singer from this band, blah, 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 whatever. And we formed a new band, and that was called Mary Jane Kelly. The last band was called In Decay. The new band was called Mary Jane Kelly. And I can talk about this in later episodes, but this band, now, very unique band, which we did deliberately. We wanted to stand out because there was a lot of sameness in the music we were listening to. But it kind of meant you either got us or you didn't get us at all. And it made it tricky. Well, the positive was that we could play with the heavy breakdown, chug, 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 chug bands, but we could also play with punk bands. We could also play with metal bands. Well, yeah, like heavy metal as opposed to like chung, chung, chung. Say like Metallica style bands, metallic bands. So that was the advantage of being a weird band. We could kind of fit on all sorts of bills. We could even play with emo bands. So, but it also meant we were a bit outcast. We were outcast from the outcasts in a way. So, again, I can talk about this more in other episodes, but that band went on to tour. We opened for Soundwave Festival. What was it, like 2009? Soundwave Festival 2009. It was the year that Alice in Chains, Bloodhound Gang, Lamb of God played, Rival Schools. You can find the poster, it's still out there. I think it's 2009. We opened for that. We opened for Bring Me the Horizon with I Killed the Prom Queen. We opened for Raised Fist, Propagandy. We got to tour with a band called Every Time I Die, and they were like one of our idols for even starting a band. And we got to tour with them, not just open for them, but we got to tour as the opening act for them, which was pretty incredible. So my point is, we got to tour and we got to open for a lot of international acts. So basically, once that wave died down, I was working an admin job and I was a bit confused and somewhat lost because I was saving up money to tour, but we weren't touring anymore. So a lot of other things happened in that time. I went traveling overseas to Europe for 5 weeks because I had this pool of saved money. So I had to do some soul searching. But so in 2012, I decided to start a music degree, a Bachelor of Music in jazz performance. And I hadn't listened to any jazz. I didn't know what jazz was, but I figured that's why you go study something, is because you don't know what it is. So I moved to Canberra and I started a music degree in 2012. And I did it somewhat undercover. What I mean by that is I didn't tell anybody what I've told you in this episode. I didn't tell anybody what bands I'd played with, what tours I'd done. I didn't want anybody to look at me in a sus way or to think, oh, this guy thinks he's really good. Because I knew my jazz level was zero. So I just wanted to be treated as a zero. Not that I was anything more than a zero, but I just wanted to be treated as a blank slate. So I didn't want to give anything away in that regard, and it worked. But that was certainly tough, going back to square one. So going from like massive stages and people like worshipping you to like being in a corner sucking at jazz. It's like a whole chapter of my life that I've not really unpacked or unraveled to anybody before. So did that degree. Took me 4 years. In that time, I started teaching drums as well, and I still teach drums to this day. That's one of the best things I got from that whole experience was teaching. Let me just check the battery. Oh yeah, we're good. There we go. I'll wrap it up soon. So that was one of the best things I got out of that whole experience at university was teaching. So learning, well, not learning how to teach, but getting students and being offered opportunities to teach at music schools and small businesses. And tutoring at different high schools, that kind of thing. I still do that to this day. And I'm very fond of teaching. And in particular, because teaching is very stable. When I say teaching, I mean technically tutoring, tuition, technically, but you're teaching an instrument. I teach people of all ages, all abilities. You have tough days and you have easy days, just like anything. But it came very natural to me. Although there is like a learning curve where you realize that you do things on your instrument intuitively that may be challenging to explain to someone else to get them to do. You hadn't really thought about verbalizing it before. So anyway, that was one positive. Just looking at the time, 30 minutes. So I'm going to have to break this up into segments. And each of these epochs, these periods, can be zoomed into further as well. But what I want to bring to your attention so that it's relevant is that, okay, so dig this. One person I met who's still a dear friend to this day, long story short, we ended up opening for Elton John's Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour in Australia for his like outdoor concerts. So we did about 13 of those, 12 or 13. We opened for Elton John, Sir Elton John. This was in early 2020. And literally the week after we got home from that tour, the world locked down. This was March 2020. So I personally had been in a bit of a tailspin for the past 4 years because everything changed and fast and very suddenly. And so, all right, so what I want to point out is that I've had to change direction. I've had to pivot very quickly, as I'm sure a lot of people have had to. That's what I wanted to bring your attention to, is that at this stage of my life, so I'm 34, I have had to pivot. I'm halfway through a computer science degree. I was somewhat getting tired of doing gigs. So I went from being in a band touring, which I thought was the most fun I've ever had in my entire life, to then making money from playing gigs, freelance as a musician, playing in restaurants, at weddings, at functions. And sometimes an artist would book you to play their concert. So, but I was somewhat looking for a way out of that because I was struggling just to make ends meet. I was able to make ends meet, but I was at burnout level. So I just couldn't keep that up. And it was at a place where if something happened to my car, I would be really stuck because how would I pay for the bill? Or if I had to get a new piece of equipment, if something of my drum kit broke. I'd be really stuck because I'd have to somehow get extra money that I didn't have. So I loved what I was doing, but the amount of work I was putting into it, I couldn't sustain it. So I was already looking for a way out of music, and then lockdown happened. And long story short, I'm halfway through a computer science degree. And I've had periods where I've wanted to quit, but I'm sticking it through. I'm sticking through this degree that I'm on. So I just wanted to share this because that's been my unique experience with music. And I honestly thought the world was kind of going in this direction. And then suddenly, like 4 or 5 years ago, the world just went, whoop, going over here now. And I've been in a tailspin since then. But I'm sort of getting my groove, getting my glide on now. But I'll tell you what, I was not expecting the world to be this way that it is. The culture that I was raised on, the people I grew up with, the teachers I was educated by, I thought the world was this other thing. And now suddenly it's like this thing that we're all in and that we're all experiencing. So I've pivoted from music. And I don't know, for anybody doing music, I wish you the best. I found it really tough. I think if you're into it, you got to do it like while you're young. It's all ages. You can do music, but I mean, if you want to do it professionally, do as much as you can while you're young, because once you hit your 30s, that's when your body starts to feel old and you realize, hang on, I have to think about my future and my financial future and my health. So whatever you do in music, just get it done as young as you can. And look, come on, there's so many examples of musicians and artists beyond their 30s into like old age. They make music. And you can make music at any time or point of your life. There's no age limit to music. But I just mean if you're thinking about performing music, do as much as you can while your body is young and healthy. And I would suggest have a backup plan. But you know, people say you shouldn't have a backup plan. But that was kind of like that Gen X mentality. It just depends what you want. Everybody's different, but I'll tell you, it's pretty obvious. Everything became really expensive really quickly in this world. So I'm just saying that just in case you are experiencing potential burnout and you're not sure what you're doing with music or why you're doing it, you either push through with it or you do what I'm doing where you pull back and start building a foundation in a different area. Or if you've got some other job that you like and you've climbed up the ranks or whatever. For me, I just found relying completely on music was making me not like music anymore. Whereas now that I've got, well, I'm not quite there yet, but just the idea of being able to make income in a new profession, so using parts of my mind that weren't utilized before, that's more exciting to me now. And music, I can just sit down and pick it up and hit record and make something. I can just do that in an afternoon because I've put so much time and practice into my craft, let's say, which I find preferable than being trapped into music and lugging all my equipment into my car, thinking about like, am I going to live under a bridge? Am I heading towards poverty? What is this? So that definitely made me feel way better about life. And I'm still not fully out of that area, but it ebbs and flows. And so I still teach drum kit. Hit me up for a lesson. Zoom lessons, I reckon they're great. Ooh, sorry if that was loud. I will wrap it up. I will wrap it up on that note. But Yeah, I teach, I work part-time, and I study part-time. Sometimes study full-time, sometimes study full-time. Some of the time, it works every time. So anyway, I'll talk more about this theme in future. I better wrap it up for now. Let me know if you listened this far. Let me know what you found interesting. Remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, send me a message. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your sport. Your sport. That's when you know it's time to go. I really appreciate your support and your sport. I wish you the best. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and love.